Hello.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see everyone's beautiful names in chat again. About
Welcome
to say
to
beautiful
a round
faces,
of
but I
table
don't see
talk. I love that Amish emote. Very cool.
any.
Oh my gosh, you are already on the plug yourself. Jesus.
Yeah, first.
Well, if you put it like so far in advance, are you really first?
Yes, because as soon as you say it, or I say it, I'm gonna press enter again.
Okay. Well, let's get that out of the way, I guess. Let's hashtag plug ourselves. Why don't you go first?
Of course, first and everything, as always. So my name is Yusufani Yume. I'm glad to be part of part 2 of Around the Table Talk, talking about Lucy's best friend Matif. I myself am a writer similar to Lucy. You can see and hear a lot of my stuff on my YouTube channel. I occasionally do streams on Twitch, but I am quite busy. And if you also like some of our D&D stuff, please check out my Patreon for Lucy's origin stories. And over to you, Pastel.
Yeah, I am Pastel the Snake on Twitch and Twitter. I'm a variety streamer. This week we've done some drawing. I know we'll play Inscription later. Maybe get back into Security Breach. I don't know. My rage is already fairly contained, but it's a short dam. Let's just put it that way. I stream here on Mondays with Marlin. We do magic. Sometimes we build Gundams. Well, I build Gundams. He paints minis. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
And then, oh, did you have something else?
I was just going to go ahead and lead us into a discussion, but I do see that there's a very wild and feral catboy lurking in the chat.
Oh, animated emotes, dude! Yes. Sorry, I get excited about the smallest things. Yeah. Okay. Shut the fuck up. So to start us off, just jumping right into that fucking bitch. So we're talking today about the different events in Matif's life that have shaped his character. Last time we talked about his like more modern mannerisms. So today we're gonna go through the things that have made him who he is. What the fuck are you guys doing in the chat? Anyway, so the first one, I think I put these in relevance order, except the last one. I just added that because it happened last episode. So, but the first one that I had down was his entire crew dying, because I felt like that was the most prevalent thing that has happened in his life. What the fuck are you guys doing? Oh my god! Jesus Christ. You guys crack me up. Sorry. Matif, as we all know, his entire crew died by the Nala, which is the ship that Del Noah, Emmett's mom. Jesus Christ, you guys. I can't not look at chat. It's moving in the corner of my vision, and I have like not diagnosable ADHD, but like, oh my god. I can't look at the screen. I gotta be on a different screen. Tell me if something happens in chat.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so his entire crew was slaughtered in a take of his ship. The way that I wrote it in my backstory was that they were targeted. So it wasn't just random pirating, looting, whatever. It was something happened on the ship, and then they were all targeted and slaughtered and stuff. He did make it out with one of his crewmates, who I have not named because I'm bad at names. Wait, I'm gonna random name generator right now. Elf. Oh, I like that name. Celesh. I like that name a lot, actually. I might name a character after that.
Sounds very close to Slaanesh.
What is Slaanesh? Am I a fucking idiot?
So Slaanesh is, if I remember correctly, the Lord of Pleasure from Warhammer.
Oh.
Don't let that stop you.
You say that like it already hasn't. So he made it off the ship with a woman named Celesh, who he had a crush on, but never like confessed his feelings or anything. And they made it to I think it's called Durin.
Oh, that's where Lucy is right now. Interesting.
Yeah. And they were taken in by the locals there, because without that they would have died. And they were brought back to like health or whatever, and then they were like sent on their way, because like they were like, yeah, we help people, but like no. But in Jurin, she died, and so he kind of holds that on his conscience. As much as like the whole crew dying at once like is a big thing, and we talk about Survivor's Guild a little bit. At least I have talked about Survivor's Guild quite a bit on different podcasts and talking about Matif and stuff. But like it's almost harder on him to have lost Celesh like that, because like it was like his redemption, right? Like he couldn't save everyone else on the ship, even though he's like this great sorcerer who has like all these powers that like nobody else did, right? And he should have been able to like save everyone. Hint, hint, he couldn't have, but that's fine because he was a level 1 sorcerer. He should have died, let's all be honest. His health was not great at level 1. But it was like his redemption to try to save Celesh, and he failed. And so like he doesn't feel like he can like keep everyone safe, and so that's why he strives, and we talked about this last time, to like protect everybody, to like be that like father figure that like is always like vigilant and watching and making sure that they're safe. And like once he becomes attached to something, it's really hard for him to stop like wanting to protect them. So I feel like that comes a lot from his and there's another event that happened. I don't want to spoil that one because that's going to be a really fun reveal, which I feel like is going to be coming up soon now that we're back in Matif's homeland. So no spoilers, but there is another thing that kind of helps him build his relationships, because like at one point he was he had a bad first impression with a lot of people, but over time like learned that like that wasn't who they were, right? And that like they were more three-dimensional, right? It wasn't just one event that like was them, it was like all this different stuff. And so that also like helps him to build his relationships. Well, it doesn't help him to build his relationships, but it helps it helps the audience identify why he doesn't build them as well as like more what's the word I want? Not normal, but like emotionally stable, like less traumatized people.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for that one, by the way. I can't wait for that one to come out. I'll have to tell Merlin again to make sure that it
I have
comes
a few
out.
questions
Yeah.
for you. So first question, with Celesh, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like the first time that, well, at least the first time that I can recall, that you talked about what happened with the two of you after the ship sank, and on the island of Joran is where the two of you ended up, and so she died on that island. Do you know, or are you willing to reveal how she died?
Like the way that I see it, and maybe Merlin has a different idea. I'm not quite sure. But it was medical complications. So she got an infection from like a bullet wound from the ship being taken over, and because they were just floating in the ocean for days, like they couldn't do anything about it, and once they got to land, they were like, oh well, now we'll be able to fix it, but because of that, she got the infection and she died. It's kind of like I kind of took that from like American Civil War kind of stuff, where like she didn't make it in time.
Interesting. And the reason I ask is because maybe it won't matter for Matif, but it's kind of like he didn't really like there was something that maybe he could have done to save her, but it wasn't necessarily something that was due to his actions, if you kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah, like, and I think that's a good distinction to make, because like it's not that he could have saved her, it's that he feels like he could have.
Yeah, exactly, because that's where Lucy kind of differs a little bit, and he feels like it was his action that caused Eve's disappearance/death. So that's like a little bit of a difference between the two.
Yeah, and for Matif, he believes his inaction is what caused all this to happen.
How cool, huh? And
we are very
thing.
similar.
Yes, so much. And the other thing that I was going to ask you about, if I can remember, oh yeah, I was just gonna make a comment in that when you were explaining why Matif can't really make connections very easily, and I was just thinking in my head, maybe he's just a very closeted botaku, and he just has a hard time talking to people because they're not as interested in boats as he is. Yeah, that was my very short prediction.
I think that there is a part of it that is kind of like this like socially anxiety around like not having found his people before he turned like what 50, right? Because that's when like elves okay, I don't know the exact equivalent, but assuming that like the second he left because like he didn't really like fit in with the other kids. Like he probably had like one or two friends, but like it's kind of like he wasn't bullied, it was just that like he was a little different. So like when he found his people, who were like the seafaring folk, right? He like really clung clung to that. And so now he's not in that element. Like, we've been on ships a couple of times, but like when we started, we were on land. And that was a lot like a culture shock almost.
Because and this goes back to what I was saying in the last episode, where the group has been together for some time, right? A good chunk of time. But I was saying last episode that I still don't feel like they know each other, you know, to the point where they can trust each other kind of unconditionally. And that's why I still felt like their bonds were still like they might have looked strong from the outside, but I feel like if they were to be tested, they might not be as strong as they look.
I think that's very different from Matif. I think that if he was tested, he would actually become a lot stronger connection to others. But I think you're right. With the group as a whole, I think if it came down to it, everyone would go their separate ways. Like if it had to.
Yeah. And so kind of based on what you just said, is Matif's you know, tendency to become stronger, to make the bond become stronger, do you think that's something that he actually wants to do, or is that like a reflex due to things that have happened in this past?
I think it's both, right? I think it comes from a place of his past, like, because when trauma happens, right, it informs our behavior, right? So and I mean this goes with anything, because your neural pathways are always using the most used pathway first, right? So like if you, let's see, if you believe that you're a failure, right, and you think it enough times, your brain starts to use that pathway a lot more often than it would another pathway where it's like, oh, I made a mistake, but I'll do better next time. One, because it's a lot easier to think I'm a failure because it's shorter, and you can ruminate on that, you can repeat it without feeling like you're like going over the same thing over and over again. But when something big happens, right, that changes the pathways. Like when a family member dies. So like, let's say, and stop me if I'm getting too into like theory and stuff like that, but when a family member dies, right, the first memory you might have thought of before they died might have been what was most recent, right? So like, let's say that your mom died and the most recent memory you had was right? But now that you don't get to make those memories as often, you don't get to create those new pathways, what happens is you latch on to a memory, right? And you use that neural pathway over. And that strengthens it, right? So where Matif, when his crew was alive, maybe the memories of each of them was more mundane, right? Like, oh, I just had an argument with that guy, oh, I hate that, whatever. But now that they're gone, he's really connected with like the strongest happy memory he has of them, and that plays, right? And then there's also the fact that he has that strong memory of the terrible thing, and that plays over and over, right? Which strengthens that pathway. And I've gotten too much into this and I've forgotten what the question was.
So it was about the tendency for Matif to try to strengthen the bond, and I was asking if it was a reflex or something of his past, and then you gave a short answer like it's a little bit of both. And then you
Right.
started explaining.
Right. So, when something like that happens, it informs a lot of our decisions based on whatever, because every behavior that you have is a combination of your genetics and your environment, right?
Mhm.
So, with that trauma that happened, it informs his behavior. So it is a reflex because of the trauma.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does to me.
Okay. If
Uh,
chat is confused, I can explain it a little bit more. But
luckily, I used to be
um,
a behavior therapist of type, so
yeah, so I
I do
think
understand.
that also comes from like uh, the feeling of like um, before that, right, when he had these like not true beliefs about these people because of the one situation that he was in, but then learned to really grow that strong connection with them and be like a part of their community, right? That also informs that like as if he has this belief that um, if he continues to create that strong connection or to put in as much into a relationship as he possibly can, that others will reciprocate that and he will create another community. Because after he lost that, he didn't have anything, right? Like he could have gone back home, but that would have left a life where he wouldn't have felt like he belonged. He would have felt like he was wasting his talents, right? He felt like he could help people. And so he wants to create that community again. And because he is surrounded by the like consistent personal connection that he has with people, it makes it so that he wants to strengthen that connection. So that's another like thing that reinforces that reflex.
Mhm. And, so you can let me know if I can ask another question or if we should move on to the next topic.
One more question.
How long did Matif sail with this particular group of people?
A long time. Even by like elf standards, it was probably like oh,
Over hundreds of years, I would imagine.
I think elves live for like 300 years, so I want to say like 100.
Okay.
Okay, I don't
I'm
know
stepping in.
about elves.
Elves on Iruvian, gnomes and elves have the same lifespan, and they can live for up to 800 years.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Okay, so let me redo those maths.
I believe we chatted about it. I believe Matif is in his 300s. I believe.
Yeah, cause oh yeah, right, because every 10 years is like one human year. So
Yeah.
so he left his homeland when he was 100.
Yeah.
Right, and he had just gotten off of Jorin. When he had met the crew. Like that was his first adventure, essentially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he was sailing with them for like 200 years, give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, here's this man who has been with this particular group for the majority of his life, right? And maybe that kind of contributes to his initial abrasiveness upon meeting new people, is because for pretty much all of his life he was just with a particular set of people. That was just my observation, and that's why I wanted to know how long he was sailing with them for.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Okay, so the next one that I have as an event was his first talk with Mulan. I think a big part of that was that he felt cornered, he felt trapped. And this had just happened right after the prophecy thing where Amesh ended up losing his powers to take some of that off of Matif. And I remember that when it first happened, and a couple of like sessions after that too, it was like a cage. Like he felt like there was this belief that destiny forced him into this, right? And he is very a proponent of like free will and willpower and things like that. Probably because he spent a lot of time with those spirits, and that's kind of like the can't speak today. Like one of the main tenets of like stuff like that. And I think it was a torn for me between his want to help people and his want to have purpose in life, especially after something terrible had happened, and his want to be free. And I didn't really come into his like strong belief about death until after that, so that might have influenced my decision a little bit more if I had that beforehand, but I did.
So I have another question for you, and maybe this is getting more on the philosophical side, but and there's many ways to see this, but so like you mentioned, Matif is a big believer in having, choices and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's looking for purpose. And just to kind of put it, just to put an image to the metaphor that I'm trying to make, does he not see having a purpose as kind of like something to be chained to?
I'm a big proponent for making characters as realistic as possible. And that means that I am 100%, I know that Matif is a hypocrite here. Because you're right, like he wants this purpose, but also if he had a purpose, that would kind of be like putting a chain on him, right? Like now he has to do this thing. And I think he's kind of come to the idea that, like, especially with Mulan and the Spirit Walker stuff, that, like, if he chose to do it, at least, like, it would be him choosing to have that instead of it being forced on him. So, like, yeah, I totally agree. He's not thinking, like, completely logically here. So, yes, yeah.
And so do you think when he finally kind of makes that connection that, there's a difference between freedom and being able to, and so, how do I put this? And that when you have a choice, like, even though it's not freedom in that sense where you're not bound by anything, but making that choice and doing what you want to do is beneficial or what's another word? Fulfilling in its own right. And do you think that when that happens, he'll understand Lucy a bit more? Because Lucy, like, he's not necessarily about freedom, but he's about people not controlling other people and people being able to make their own decisions, right? Which is why he's like, you know, this is why I do what I do, right? Even though it puts me in danger, like because it's my choice, it's okay.
I think the problem with that is that Matif has not seen that. Like, Matif, and especially because he's also clouded by resentment, which is not Lucy's fault. I mean, it is to a small extent, but it's not his fault that he continues to hold that belief. Again, I want to make it very clear to both you and the audience that these are Matif's views, not mine. Because I hold no resentment towards it. I love our roleplay, and but I think even if he gets an understanding of why Lucy does those things, I don't know if he'll be able to give up that resentment, and I don't know if he can give what he believes are the slights that Lucy has done. Especially with Lucy leaving the party. I feel like that's going to be the biggest one. If anybody saw the last episode, hopefully no spoilers.
Yes.
But the fact that he feels like Lucy has given up on them, or that he does not find them as important, is a big proponent of the animosity there. And I think even if he believed that, oh, there's a reason behind it, I don't know if he would change his
mind. And that's quite interesting because for those who have seen it, they would know that Lucy kind of really went off on Matif before he left. And I'm wondering if Matif understood what Lucy was trying to say. Because even like the first line of that, Lucy said, "Maybe I've been talking all this time and you've never really understood me." Right? And then
I love that
Lucy
line.
goes off to say like, yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say I love that line because I think they've been talking past each other for so long. But I don't think Matif would ever admit that. But you continue with your thought.
Because like Lucy was trying to say, he was in the beginning of the little speech that he had, he was going over all the details that he had asked Matif, right? So the Navy, Esther, the number of sailors on his ship, and he tells Matif like, yeah, I know these are important to you and I've never denied that for you. And then he goes off to say, every time I try to fight for what I believe in, there's always something from you, right? And then Lucy goes, you know, have you ever wondered why I climbed the clock tower? Why, like, I made that wish to save all these people? Why I have zero arms? And he's like, do you ever wonder why I do all that stuff? Right? And then, because that's him trying to say, like, have you ever like try to put yourself in my shoes and just try to understand a little bit? And so I'm wondering if that's what Matif got from that, or if he got something else. Like you mentioned, like, because you said he thinks that maybe Lucy doesn't think that they're as important, right? Which isn't what Lucy was trying to say. And so I'm wondering, like, what did Matif get out of that little speech that Lucy had?
I think Matif was too enraged to really take anything away from it. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
But I also think a part of it is, for Matif, it's not the reason you do things, it's what you do. Which I know is a philosophical thing, and I don't remember what it actually is. Not the ends justify the means, but like the motive doesn't matter. It's the consequences or whatever.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and he doesn't care to a certain extent. I care,
Mhm.
but I don't think he cares.
Okay. I have some thoughts for you about that, but I will think on them a little bit more before I say anything. So please go ahead and continue.
Okay. So I think with what happened in Matif's early life, like early childhood, and in a lot of psychology theory, what happens in your early childhood is really important, because it starts creating those pathways. And like we talked about earlier, the more used a neural pathway is, the more it becomes the main pathway that you will use, right? So in his early childhood, it was like what was important was when people like would do things for him, right? So like when they would take time to care about the things that he cared about, or when they would like push themselves to want to hang out with him, like little kid stuff, right? Like when you see someone on the playground who's sad, that was a big part of what was important, right? And so it didn't matter why people did those things. It wasn't like, even if it was out of sympathy, but at least like they tried to make him feel better, or they tried to reach out, they tried to be friends, right? And so I think that's another big thing that influences this, is that he, as a child, or as a child when he's like 50 years old,
so strange to hear.
He really clung on to those interactions, and that's why actions speak louder than words. There we fucking go. No, that's still not right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know, but like physiologically, do elves age slower too?
That's a Merlin question.
Because I wasn't sure. Because like,
Hello, it's me, Mel, the Manchester. What is your concern? What is your question?
so like, physiologically, like with puberty and all that stuff, do elves is that like slowed down based on their age, or how does that work?
How I understand the elves is when all the races were created by the gods, right? Because most of the races, all the races were created by different gods or different combinations of gods, and how they wanted people to live, basically, like how they wanted sentient life to live. Elves were the first, because they're just like, elves, people shouldn't have to like suffer and die quickly. They should have a lot of time to be able to do things. So how I view it is, it's not quite like every year is like every 10 years is like 1 year. It's not quite like that. They usually reach like equivalent of like 18, 20 by the time they're 100, and then it slows right down after that. So okay. Like there are some, how I like to imagine that there are some like elven health conditions where they don't slow down and they just die. They like live a human length lifespan, and that's considered like super tragic.
Interesting.
So
interesting that living a human lifespan is considered tragic.
Yeah. But yeah, so they usually it's slow to begin with, but by the time they're 100, they 18, 20, and then they have 700 years to live the rest of their life. So yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
No, that was my final question.
Okay, I will go back into the void now.
Okay.
What a freaking nerd.
Those are the two people having a podcast and philosophical psychological discussion about a made-up character.
Hey, that's my OC you're talking about.
Yeah, because it just obviously being a humanoid in real life, it's very hard to imagine living for 700 years, and just like the different mindset you'd have to take in order to be living for that long, because going back to the game, the group and how long Matif has been with him is literally like a very, very minuscule fraction of his life. And so that was actually near the end of Lucy's speech. It's like, maybe none of this like really hits you because of how long you've lived, and maybe you don't really understand what it's like to live for such a short amount of time, especially in Lucy's case where the man's like 26, right? And he's died twice. And that was like one of the things that he'd mentioned. It's like, is this really hitting you the same way it is that it's hitting me and maybe the rest of the group as well? Because I believe you are, or Matif, well, I don't know about tieflings, but if I remember correctly, halflings live around like a human lifespan. Maybe half elves live like slightly even longer. I'm not too sure, and I have no idea about tieflings. But if I get Merlin correctly, is that Matif will be the one who stays alive the longest in terms of just expected lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any thoughts about that, Pastel?
I think that is going to become more important as things go on, because I think I don't think anybody else in the group lives as long as Matif will. Yeah, because I even think halflings don't live that long. And I think
Merlin's
first of all,
technically a baby because she doesn't remember anything.
But I think, like, that the idea of that is going to, oh shoot, halflings do only live like, that's right. First of all, I think, like, the mortality aspect of it is going to hit at some point, but I think, Lucy definitely has a point, and I think Matif will come to realize that at some point.
And this is an aside, but maybe Dante will turn into a tree and live for hundreds of years, like an elf. And then Dante will live on when Matif decides to build a new ship. He'll use your body as wood to make the new ship.
What?
And so you'll live on forever.
Oh, like the ship of Theseus.
Yeah, but literally using Dante as wood when he turns into a tree. Yeah, that was just an aside. Please go on to the serious stuff.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
No problem. As long as you need to find the train.
I'd just be repeating myself at this point that, like, I think Lucy has a point, and I think Matif will see that as time goes on.
So if you want to go on to if you have another topic, then we can move on to that if you want.
Yeah. So the next one is Lucy's first death, and I
first
put
one.
second fight. I don't know what that means. Oh, their second fight maybe? So not the one... Oh, right! Because the second fight was when I lightning did the ship, and you tackled me to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I put Lucy's death with that one because I think it shows the more emotional side of Matif. So like those are both times where he cried. I think maybe they're the only times that I'm not sure. But I think at least for the fight, it was like for a while his purpose was to take down the Nala, right? Like that was his goal, was revenge. And then I think during that fight he had a change of heart, right? He was like, this is not the way that things, the best way that these things, right? Like as much as I hate like the Nala, I now have people that I need to like protect, right? And some of that was overtaken by this want to chastise Lucy for getting in the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we all have our struggles. I've let you do your thing, like why won't you let me do mine? And he didn't know about Eve at the time, and I still don't think he knows about Eve in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because he doesn't know what Eve looks like, so he doesn't know that Eve was on the ship. He just knows that Eve is important to you. But yeah, and I think that comes back to him and Lucy's first death, because it shows his change of heart again. That like there was and now is this animosity. Lucy. But when he died, inevitably he still felt bad, because like this was someone who he, like, as much as he didn't like, he still wanted to protect. And like losing that felt very like reliving, like losing Celesh.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, the other part of that was that Lucy was brought back to life, and Matif did not agree with that at all. But that was after the whole crying scene, where upset that Lucy had died.
Uh-huh. And to go along with that, it was hard for obviously us as players, and I'm sure the characters as well, to have someone die and not even hours later he's brought back to life. Like, what kind of effect do you think that has on Matif, and not just Matif but the group in general?
That's a good question.
Like you mentioned, that death is usually like, it should be like final, right? But here he is brought back, like, I don't know, it was probably like minutes after.
Yeah. I think on the group, it gives the sense that like there will always be a way. Like it gives this sense that even if we fail, we can try again.
Mm-hmm.
But
very dangerous mindset, just putting that in there.
Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. Not the way that things should. Oh god.
Could I just quickly butt in real quick about the what I wanted, what I wanted to express to the party?
Mm-hmm.
especially to Lucy and to Matif, right? My intention, or sorry, Sundaresh's intention was to make them specifically feel like they are not in control of the situation.
Oh, are we talking about the second time Lucy died?
Yes, sorry, real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, go into the second time. Because that is what I wanted to feel. What I wanted you guys to feel. Yeah. Sorry, I will zoom back into the voice.
Well, that is a great segue to the second time Lucy died. Unless you have more questions about the first time.
Yeah, so just like an additional question. Do you feel like it would have been different if Lucy was dead for maybe like 2-3 weeks or maybe even a month before being brought back to life?
Oh, 100%. I think that would have been very different. And I honestly... Well, I don't know. I can't speak for Astro. But I don't know if he would have been brought back. Because I think... Nope, I'm not gonna... Well, okay, my personal take on the situation is that, Emmett made the decision in a very emotionally heightened state. And I don't know if over time that grief would have become something a little bit numbed, and I don't know if she would have made the same choice.
It'll have to be
Again.
something that we go into when we talk about Emmett and Astrid. Probably
with Astrid.
Visits. Yeah.
So someone write that down.
Quick, write that down.
Here, wait. Okay, I wrote it down.
Yeah, and then you were talking about the second time, a segue.
Yes, so, the second time that Lucy died, I definitely got that sense of, being powerless, but more in a sense of, like, it comes back to the, like, when he saw the sapphire on his hand, my immediate thought was, I'm never doing what she says. She can fucking kill me. Like, like, he felt like this was another instance of destiny, almost, where, like, he would have lost all free will. And my immediate thought was, first of all, if Lucy dies here, I'm not bringing it back, because he should be allowed to rest. But my second thought was, the second Sundaresh starts talking to him, he's gonna completely ignore her, one, but he's not going to play this game. Like, yeah.
He's just covering your ears like, no, I can't hear you.
Yeah, pretty much. Honest to fucking God, it would have been very childish. Like, but yeah, I did want to say that because I know that Merlin was, we were talking about how Matif was taking it the other day.
Sorry, that sounded.
What?
No, I just because Matif has always had, like, ever since he made that first joke, he's always had, like, sexual connotations whenever we start talking about
Oh,
him.
yeah. What did I fucking say?
You and Merlin were talking about how Matif was taking it the other day.
Oh. That one I didn't even catch. Usually I can catch them.
Okay. And don't let that distract us from staying serious and whatnot.
We're never serious. But we were talking about the second time that Lucy died. I think the second time that Lucy died, Matif was definitely a lot harder about it. First of all, because, like, well, he shouldn't have come back in the first place. So, you know, okay, don't take this the wrong way. But, he's kind of like, well, he's finally where he belongs. Right? Don't take that the wrong way.
No, I get it. I get it. 6 feet underground.
And then the party, the rest of the party immediately was out, right? And that hurt like so hard. Which, by the way, I didn't even realize this in the last episode, but he might have gotten his strong religious belief because of the you know, there's a cliche or a stereotype about the South that they're very religious. And then of course his town has a Southern accent. My immediate thought was, oh, they have this the same stereotypical belief in religion that the South does. But anyway, what was I talking about? Yes.
You were talking about this. Well, obviously the second time Lucy died.
Right. Yes. The second time that Lucy died. Well, first of all, he failed his medicine check, so he didn't think he was dead for like a bit.
Yeah, I was a little bit confused on that part. Like, when did he actually realize he had died?
I think when everyone started talking about putting him in the bag of holding.
Okay.
Because he was like, wait, that's not something you would do to a person. What the fuck? He's gonna die if you do that. And then he was like, oh shit. But then of course, like, he's too stubborn to like change his demeanor about it. So he was like, oh yeah, well, you know, good riddance. That's so mean. Fuck. But yeah, I think that's where he was at. He was also like, the Sundaresh thing was kind of a big deal to him at the time. I don't think I showed that very well, but yeah.
I think you did. Because you had told Sundaresh that, you know, I'm very much afraid of you right now, but, you know, this is, I'm very angry, basically.
Right.
And so, what kind of something that I do want to talk about regarding Lucy's second death is that when it kind of happened, there was kind of like it wasn't said out loud, but it felt like there was some type of expectation looking towards you and Emmett, like, are you going to do it? Right? Looking, like, talking about the sapphire.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Matif wasn't going to do it, and Emmett seemed a little bit reluctant. Like, second time? Do you have any thoughts about that? Either as Matif or as a player?
As a player, I have a lot of thoughts that I think are very fun. Because now that we know that Lucy wasn't dead, think about, like, what Del Noah and Sundaresh were doing, right? Like, that is so manipulative. Oh my god. That, like, Sundaresh was like, well, do you want to wish him back again? And she knows he's not dead. Like, what the fuck?
The way I understood is that he actually did die, but Sundaresh basically just has like an on and off switch for Lucy, is how I understand it. Is that he was dead. The thing that was an illusion was the sapphire, but Lucy actually was dead, is how I understood it.
But doesn't the sapphire move to somebody else? Well, I guess that Sundaresh could just be like dead. The thing moves, you get it again.
Exactly.
And then just take over the entire world.
I don't want to interfere too much because I love not giving you guys too much information. But Lucy was dead.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well then, never mind. But that was the thought I had as a player. Was
the
that's
other
so...
thing about the sapphire in your hand, Pastel? I think I mentioned this after we finished the game. But it was never there. It was an illusion. You never like investigated it.
Right.
You only get like the mark after you make a wish with them, which is what she was trying to taunt you into doing.
Yeah, and I don't know if you were, but Matif was like super against that. Okay. Because he's a little childish. A little childish bitch. Yeah.
What I wanted to kind of not really get to, but lead into is that, you know, obviously the first time someone dies, it's a big deal. But the second time someone dies, maybe it's a big deal or maybe it's not. And then what happens like the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time? Like when does it stop basically? And when does it kind of become okay for like, oh, he'll die but he'll come back anyway, right? And I think you were kind of getting that. You'll probably get to that because you have mentioned a few times like Matif feels sorry for Lucy in that he's just a walking revenant where he can't escape basically.
I think definitely the next time that Lucy dies, Matif is going to be very verbal with the rest of the group that he should not be brought back.
So I'm going to kill you myself. I'm going to make sure you stay dead.
Did you want to get to the next thing? I don't know how much.
So I've still got like an hour and 30 minutes, so
Okay.
I'm okay on my end.
Sweet. I have enough time. We'll be fine.
Okay.
The next one I had was the first Lucy fight. So the one in the rain about Verna's character, who I can't remember the name of. But I think that was a really molding moment for their relationship and even like the dynamics. And I cannot wait for the episode with Lucy so that we can talk about this from the other perspective as well. But Matif, that's kind of when Matif finally started wanting to protect everyone, like, and in a emotional betrayal kind of sense, right? Because I think even in like pirate ships and stuff like that, mutinies are kind of a thing. And after, you know, sailing for 100 and some years, right, that became like quite a bit of a thing. Like he's seen multiple mutinies before, and he is like always on the vigilance for like people who would betray the group essentially, and people who would start vocalizing an uprising, which you've done in the past, not against the group, but against the leaders of Markovia, right? Was that where you did it, or? Okay.
Lucy's done it in multiple places, but yeah.
Yeah. Where you've riled up the people, and Matifa saw that, and he was like, oh no, we're on that path here. Like, I gotta stop this now. So that was kind of like the main reason. And also just fed up with Lucy's shit. Like, Lucy at this point had been, you know, what he perceived as taunting Dante into doing things that he didn't want to do. And he had been putting everybody in danger and making everyone suffer for the consequences of his actions, right? So he was like fed up with Lucy at that point. And yeah.
And so that just kind of like led to where it is now then.
Right. And I think we've... Oh, you go.
No, this is going to lead into something else, so please go ahead.
I think we have talked a little bit about the fight and why it didn't come to blows, like physical blows. Unless, did we talk about that off screen or?
I don't remember.
Well, I'll just reiterate it really quick, just in case. The reason why it didn't come physical kind of stuff is that Matif, and it, from what you told me, it sounded like Lucy was ready for it, right? For Matif, it was like I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm not here to prove anything. Like, at this point, like, I'm not here to pretend like I'm stronger than you physically. Like, I'm not in a dick mode with you. Like, you will either see my point or you won't, and physical violence is not going to change. And I think that also comes from, like, a life in pirating and having seen that people have tried that before and it's never worked.
That's.
I mean, it probably works sometimes. Sorry.
I was gonna say that's an interesting. It's good to know that viewpoint, both as a player and myself, and it would be interesting if Lucy kind of got that, because in Lucy's head, the reason he wants to fight is because fighting to Lucy shows how important whatever that issue is to him. So for it to come to physical blows means that this is really important to me. It's probably not the best way of expressing that, but that's why he chose to be ready to fight. Not so that he can force his belief or opinion on Matif and be like, I'm stronger, so I'm right. But rather is to show, hey, this is important to me and I'm willing to resort to this in order to prove that to you, basically.
And I think that really does show the big difference between Matif and Lucy. They just don't see the other person's perspective at all.
It's like one of those things when you look on from the outside, it's frustrating to see. It's like, you guys are the same, why don't you see it?
That is 100% Matif. I mean, not like 100%, but like there's two people in this relationship, and I'm not gonna pretend like I am the better person, because I'm not. And did you want to do whatever you were gonna say that would change the subject?
Well, I was just going to ask, like, because there's such a volatile isn't the right word, but there's a lot of energy that has been put into the relationship between Matif and Lucy. But I was wondering, like, is there anything that he has against any of the other members of the party?
That's a good question. I think the only person he holds anything against right now is Rowan, and that's just skeptical. He doesn't trust her yet. Um, Again, not the healthiest mindset, but I think he holds Emeth and Dante on a pedestal a little bit.
Like they can do no wrong kind of pedestal?
Kind of, yeah. Like, you know what? This is gonna sound so hypocritical, but because I was just talking about how he doesn't care about Lucy's motives, but I think it's kind of in the vein of like, they have the right reasons for things, so I trust them to make the right call. Where he definitely doesn't believe that about other people. And I think that does come down to trust, like 100%.
Interesting. And I don't know if this applies, but does Matif see trust in kind of like a here's 100 coins every time you do something to not make me trust you, you lose a coin, or is he the type to be okay, you start with 0 coins and you have to earn every coin?
You have to earn every coin.
Okay. And then, so that makes me kind of wonder, like, what has the rest of the group done to kind of like earn Matif's trust?
I think part of it. Well, I think the Lucy thing is both. Like, for Lucy, he just didn't earn enough coins, and he's had his coins taken away too many times. So, like, there's no trust there. But I think for everyone else, it's that there wasn't a big thing that happened, but it's like the little things, like the fact that you haven't stabbed me in the back yet, or the fact that like I was upset and like you were helping me. It kind of comes back to the like child aspect of it. Like his childhood made him believe that these small acts were important. So like with time and the fact that nobody is like gone against what his beliefs are, he has given out coins. And I don't think there's anything currently that has taken them away. Like, even with the Nala thing, I think he believes that Emeth is like so many degrees of separation away from it that she's not responsible for anything like related to that.
And so I'm not a psychologist of any type, but trying to put like a not a label, but trying to pull everything together, to me Matif kind of seems like, so let me go over my evidence first before I present my conclusion. So the first bit of evidence that I have for this conclusion is that he's lived for a long time relatively to the rest of the group, and in that life of his, he's been primarily with a certain selection of people, right? And he's lived his life with certain conditions for most of his life, right? And in addition to that, he is not a very big fan of things that things or people that he feels like he has no control over, whether it comes to the Spirit Walker thing or Lucy. And he tends to trust people that he feels like he can know what they're going to do. And so it seems like, in my head, that Matif is very much, he likes stability, right? And anything that kind of threatens that stability it sets off like alarms in his head. Does that kind of describe Matif a little bit?
What kind of alarms?
I think the alarm depends on what exactly it is. So if it threatens his stability, like his own stability in his life, then I feel like it brings up alarms of like either stay away or keep it away. But if it's
Yeah.
threatening the stability of something else that's not really directly related to him, then I think the alarm isn't as strong, or it's not really there.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that it depends on how important it is to him, because like with Lucy cares about like a lot of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like he cares a lot about like the suffering of others and the political things that cause that. And Matif does not care, so those alarms don't go off for him when it's like stuff like that. But it would go off if it was about like the people around him or like him.
Interesting. Yeah, and I will talk more about that once we do get to Lucy, because just to talk about real quick, part of the reason he can fight for that is because for the longest time he believed that the girl he loved, Eve, was dead. So there wasn't really anyone to protect in his mind, only like the things that kind of caused that death to happen. But part of the struggle now is now there's a person and potentially multiple people that he might have to choose between when it comes to fighting for the bigger picture and fighting for people that he cares about. But that's something that we'll talk about in Lucy's episode.
Okay. Because that is something that I think is really interesting. We should talk.
Yeah. Yeah, back to Matif Thoro.
Actually, that's all I had. And I do need to go soon, so maybe this would be a good place to...
Do you have any closing thoughts on anything, or anything that you'd like to see in any of the other following episodes with any characters?
I feel like I'll talk about what I want to see with Matif in the episodes, and then when we talk about the others, I think I would rather do it that way. I am very excited to see Matif's backstory come like fully out, because I think the only thing that's really missing is his like what kind of went down in his hometown. Because Matif is such an open character, like he's very willing to talk about the things that have happened, that is like almost wanting to tell somebody, like he's never been able to like really process through it, and maybe like talking to somebody would really help him to like get to the bottom of like where this emotion comes from around it. But I'm really excited for that, and then I'm really excited to see what happens for Lucy coming back to the party. If he's going to, I'm not saying that he has. But I think that will be an interesting dynamic with everybody.
And kind of speaking to what you were saying, I wonder if that's something that maybe Dante and Matif maybe can connect over. Because I'm just assuming a lot from Dante's backstory and his demeanor. But maybe Dante could kind of understand where a lot of this reluctance to talk to people comes from. And like I said, I'm just assuming from a lot of Dante's character. So we haven't really heard much of his like hometown life. But I wonder if that's something that they might be able to connect over.
I really want Matif and Dante to on a more personal level. That is something I do want to work.
And who knows? Maybe that's what connects them. I guess we'll see. And yeah, maybe Dante's patron being in Matif's hometown will have something to do with that. Or not hometown, but homeland.
Yeah.
And my closing thoughts, I think I already summarized them, and kind of like how I see Matif as a whole. Obviously, there's more to it, but on a basic description, that's kind of how I see it. And other closing thoughts, Matif is such a very interesting character to talk about, especially coming from the person who plays Lucy. So much similarities, yet so different. And like you mentioned, I am very interested to see what it looks like if or when Lucy does return to the party. I'm also very interested to see what happens if he doesn't return, and you guys trying to figure out what happened to him. So many different ways this can play out, which is what makes Herald so exciting.
Yeah.
Is that you never know. Maybe next time you guys see Lucy, he's the big bad. And so, shall we wrap it up then?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me type it up real quick. Shall we hashtag plug yourself?
Yes.
You first.
Fine. I am Pastel the Snake on Twitch and Twitter. I am a variety streamer. We've been doing some art. We've been doing some horror games. And I'm excited to continue on Saturday. That's me.
My name is Usubena Yume. I am not the host of today. I'm the host of The Other Side. But I am also looking forward to our D&D game on Saturday, where you can catch Pastel, Merlin, the DM, Astrid Arcana, Wilhelm Voster, and Iriza play a game called Heralds. And we are at a very interesting point in the story where the group has been split and people are trying to do their own agendas. So please, if you are interested in D&D and roleplay and emotion and DM inflicted trauma, please go ahead and check it out. And I believe that's all. Hopefully Merlin's still here to end the stream. Otherwise, we're gonna have to. There you go. Yeah, but thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it, and we will catch you on the other side. Bye bye.